Now, this has led to the situation that with a good financing system, we were able to really professionalize farming. And if we look at today, 80 years onwards, the Netherlands is the second larger of agricultural produce in the world, next to the United States, which is incredible for a country which is so densely populated with only 18 million people, which is less than 10% of the Nigerian people. So that's really amazing. So we have made a lot of progress in agriculture, always being innovative and being on the forefront, that we also started to export this knowledge. And this is what we started doing in the 1980s. And this is also what brought us to Africa, because in Africa there's, we believe, such a potential for agriculture, climate-wise, that it really makes sense to do the investments over there. And if you look at Africa, you will always have to look at Nigeria, because it's the biggest country, it's the biggest market. So what we see at NABC, which was founded in 1946, is that yes, a lot of the entrepreneurs in the Netherlands look at the Nigerian market. I think half of the members of NABC, and we have like 250 members, all these companies have been to Nigeria and are doing more or less some kind of business in Nigeria. And also some really big Dutch companies have invested in Nigeria because of this potential and because of this big market. So there's Friesland Campina in dairy, and there's of course Heineken, the biggest investor in Nigeria, I think among one of the biggest. Of course, making Heineken beer and lots of other beers as well. So this is interesting, and we have always been trying to promote this from NABC, and we see that there is not just one method in doing so. So if I look at the time 20 years backwards, we always had to say that you could really do sound business in Africa, but it was more like development cooperation, more like we have to help some poor people. So it was more like development aid. And I think things really shifted like 20 years ago when we thought, okay, it's a much better way to talk to each other as equal partners and trying to do some sound business. So this is what we try to do, and this means that we really like to organize trade missions to Nigeria, bringing Dutch entrepreneurs, especially in agri-industries, to Nigerian markets, like in places to the Kaduna district, but also to Kano, always traveling through Lagos, because you have to see the dynamics over there. But that brings a good picture to many Dutch entrepreneurs, and really opens up business opportunities. On the other hand, we always find that it's always interesting also for Nigerian businessmen to come to the Netherlands. However, we have experienced much difficulties in organizing that, especially because of the visa problems. For Nigerians wanting to enter the EU, it's always very difficult to quickly gain a visa. So that is still something we try to push for, and things that we really want to change. And this is what we're trying to do. In promoting our services, we never work alone. We work very closely with the Dutch government and its government agency, the trade promotion agency of the Dutch government. But we also work together with the employers organization, which is also really well organized in the Netherlands, representing all industries in the Netherlands, and having also a big representation of agriculture. There's a lot of echo on the line, and we also try to bring industries together in the Netherlands to inform them about doing business in African markets, such as in Nigeria. One thing in particular that has become more successful over time is not to just bring the overall information on doing business in a certain country, but to present it sector-wise. For instance, if we look at agriculture, to look at the tomato industry in Nigeria, or the market for seeds, seed breeding in Nigeria. This we find, this focused approach, we find to work best. And again, both ways, having Dutch people go to Nigeria and Nigerians visiting the Netherlands. That's it for now. Please, over to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Salim. I'm going to put the presentation so that there's more well-rounded understanding, because the World Bank Group is such a complex organization. So I hope the visual presentation will help. So I'm gonna put it on. Oh, sorry, that's not it. Let me try again. Now where it disappeared. We tried during the, I'm sorry about that. We tried during the testing and it worked. Yeah, I don't know. The other way I could maybe send it to you, or let me see. Oh, just a second. Now it's gonna work. Okay, I think I found it. So do you see it now? Okay, perfect. Frank is showing thumbs up. Okay, great. So yeah, I will start the presentation first with like an overall World Bank Group operating model, and that kind of will explain where MIGA stands within the group. So World Bank is a very big group of organizations, and there are kind of two focus areas. One is on the public sector, and another one is on a private sector. And while the World Bank is more known about working with the government, at the same time, very active part of the World Bank is the part that focuses on the private sector exclusively. And those are two organizations, IFC and MIGA. And while IFC is more on the financing part, encouraging private sector development, MIGA promotes foreign direct investment through political risk insurance tools or guarantees, and also we have the credit enhancement tools as well. So we kind of like in the years, for many years at the World Bank, we kind of worked separately in our own ways, right? So, but now starting the last calendar year, so the new vision of the bank is actually to work together to attract foreign investment, to develop private sector, and also where public sector side helps is that for the private sector to develop, we need certain regulations and policies to be in place so that the private sector is more comfortable coming into a different country and developing business, right? So we need the regulations not only on the private sector, but we need on the public sector side as well. And if these two arms work together, that will more encourage these type of investments. And with that, I wanted to say that now the World Bank Group is working on the agribusiness project in Nigeria, where the public sector arm is looking at different regulations, policies, how they can work with local governments to improve the private sector side. And IFC and MIGA is trying to develop the private sector and also bring in any concerns and understand the private sector challenges they are facing. And I don't know if any of you are already operating an agribusiness right now. Maybe during the Q&A session, you can also share your experience. The next slide is I wanted to show you specifically for MIGA. We have a certain investment criteria that we need to meet in order for us to issue the guarantees, what we supporting private sector. So the first criteria is that we support the foreign direct investors. So that means that the investors and lenders going into Nigeria need to be incorporated outside Nigeria. So they need to be offshore. So because our mandate is to promote FDI, we cannot support local to local type of investment. So that is one. The second, we identify financial instrument that we would provide the guarantees for. And there are very wide range of instruments, and it could be starting from equity to shareholder, non-shareholder loans. Also, we can guarantee management contracts or corporate guarantees, as long as there is a commercial aspect to it and it is for productive purposes. So on the right side, at least on my right side, you can see that what we can cover is 95% of the debt and 90% of equity. And where MIGA's also kind of benefit comes in, that we can cover investments up to 20 years, which is beneficial to investors because they know that especially agribusiness investments are not like a short term. It's not like 1-2 years unless it's maybe specific debt, but for the equity investments, investors definitely would see the comfort. And the third criteria is the host country, and of course, host country needs to be the member country of MIGA. in which case Nigeria is, and also the investor needs to be a MIGA member country, and most of the European countries are MIGA's member countries. So, and when we look at the project level, we would, during our analysis and underwriting, we look deeply into the development impact. That is a very, very important criteria, because if the investment does not bring substantial development impact into country, into local communities, we would not be able to support, because we are part of the World Bank Group and we have a development impact. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the project needs to have this impact right away. It is actually MIGA's value add that we can work with the investor and with the local project company to develop this impact, bring the best kind of environmental, social, climate standards, gender. So that's all we work together as a team with the investor and the project company. So that's about the investment criteria we look at. And now going to the main part. So what are the risks that we cover, and what are these kind of insurance tools that we provide to the investors? And talking about the risks, you see there are like 4 risks that are mentioned. One thing is like, because we guarantee investors who come to us and they want to protect their investment against these risks. Sometimes maybe there are these risks once they go to the country, there may not be there. They feel like, okay, I have come in, I have established myself, and these type of risks are actually non-existent, right? What I wanted to kind of mention to you, we cover risks, but also perceived risks, because often investors, when they go to another country, another jurisdiction, they have certain perception that these type of risks exist, right? So going to the first risk, the currency inconvertibility and transfer restriction, that is if the local company generates the revenue in local currency, but then at the time when loan needs to be repaid or dividends need to be repaid, there is an ability to convert from local currency to, for example, euros, and even if the conversion is available, they are not able to transfer the hard currency out due to specific capital control in place in the country at the time. So that is one risk. The next is expropriation. On expropriation, it could be as as far as complete nationalization. But most what we kind of have seen, that there are steps that makes it impossible for the project to operate through some kind of discriminatory measures, which could be non-renewal of licenses or permits, or it could be maybe a certain increase in taxes or tariffs that makes the company not being able to operate. And war and civil disturbance, it is destruction of assets or interruption of business due to political violence. And what that means is basically that maybe your specific project is not affected, but because there is a political type of demonstrations, or it's the guarantee holder, so we call the entity to whom we issue Zambia, with the Zambia Development Agency. So it's kind of show you all 4 covers at work. And you can see like on one side there is also like commercial lenders here. As you can see, they may be, I don't remember precisely, but it could be that those were local lenders and we couldn't cover them. Although I can tell you that any parties that we don't cover directly, indirectly benefit from MIGA's involvement, because if there are any kind of issues with the project, when we try to mitigate this with the government entities on behalf of the investor, we mitigate on behalf of the project. Right, so we do not go just to talk by a specific investor, the entire project, because for us it's important the development impact that it brings to the country, and we don't want that this development impact disappears just because of the first instance of any kind of issues that arise. So my last slide, this would be here, is just to show you, I kind of mentioned in many instances about MIGA's mitigation role, because if you look at the MIGA, we are kind of in between the government and between the private sector investor, trying to mitigate these kind of issues to make sure the project continues smoothly. If there are cases that we need to pay out for the losses for any of the 4 risks occurred, we would do so. But we try everything we can to bring both sides together and resolve these issues. And as you can see, during our history of MIGA, we have paid 11 claims, of which 9 claims have been for war and civil disturbance. And in that case, we do not really mitigate these type of disputes. We pay out for the losses. 2 of the claims out of 11 have been for expropriation covers before the year 2000. And these claims have been resolved so far, but I believe this speaks a lot about track record and about what we can do on both sides, on the investor and also on the project company in the host country. Okay, thank you so much. So I'm gonna stop here and look forward to the next question.
Well, to be very honest, Salim, it's hard to tell how much influence we had in establishing contacts between parties. Of course, we are trying, but you can never really claim the success when you are the broker. Yes, interesting work it is indeed. Like I said earlier, that NABC as a promoter of trade between Africa and Europe is really focusing on three items. At first, it's informing people about doing business. Second one is to inspire people about doing business. And the third thing that we are doing at NABC is to connect, actually bring people together. And that's exactly what we do at those big conferences we organize, like the Africa Works event that we held last year. These are expensive events with a high cost, and it's always difficult to find the right sponsors. Everyone wants to be there, but nobody really wants to pay for it, because up front you never really know what you're getting. But yes, we did it. But we see that the character of these meetings is changing. So in the beginning, we had these very big plenary presentations by companies, by governments, officials, etc., which was during these Africa Works events, we used to have very large plenary sessions with presentations by government officials, by entrepreneurs, by other kind of institutions doing business in. But we found that there is less and less interest in those large gatherings. What is more interesting to have closed meetings into the back rooms, where a bit of kind of matchmaking takes place. And this is also what we tried to do in our last session last year, is where we really wanted to see what kind of greener agriculture we could establish in Nigeria with Dutch investors. I've been at some of these sessions, for instance, with the Dutch financier, the Invest International, that is helping companies to mitigate risks when doing business in a country like Nigeria. That can also provide loans and credit if need be. I've really seen some good sessions, although I'm not aware that very concrete transactions came out of this. Not at the meetings last year, but I'm sure later on, I think some good progress has been made. So overall, I could say is that our conclusion is that those really big events are over. If you're looking for trade promotion, you should now really focus on very niche industries. Like I said, for instance, on the seed business, on the potatoes, on cassava, on dairy. Then you can really gather all the stakeholders into one room. Otherwise, it's not going to fly. If it's going to be cross industries, it's not going to work. That for us is a big lesson learned. And let me leave it at that. We already lost some valuable time. Over to you, Mr. Moderator.
No, thank you. This is a really good question, and I would say this is kind of like an essence of what MIGA does and the World Bank, right? Because for each project, it's important for us to look at the local communities and SMEs, local enterprises. And that's true that when you look at MIGA's portfolio, our projects are normally large scale, foreign direct investment. And that is for the reason that we try to achieve the high development impact with each project. And if it's a large scale, it brings so much more benefit to the local local communities and so on. However, like, let's say if there is a large investment, let's say large processing plant, it still is so much related to creating opportunities for smallholder farmers, for cooperatives, SMEs, because these large scale projects, they create this demand for local inputs. Also increases the operations activity in the transport sector and warehousing, packaging, and promoting the food security in general. So that's, even when we look at the large-scale investments, they still support the smaller companies and local communities. And on the another thing I wanted to mention, that at MIGA we also have a special program, which is small investment program, that is designed for the projects which are 10 million or less investment amount. And in agribusiness, these smaller investments often actually bring very high development impact in terms of jobs. So I have seen like a 2 million investment project in the fruit processing, for example, that created around more than 1,000 permanent and seasonal jobs. So it also links the farmers to formal markets and so on. So I have to say that our business model is very inclusive, very well-rounded, and we look at specifically at underserved communities and small farmers for the agribusiness sector. I'll stop here. Thank you.
I think someone has a question. Salim, please.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? This question I think is particularly directed at Mr. Frank. So I want to ask, so following the Africa Works event on green industrialization, can you share more specific examples of how it led to the new deals or investment in Africa agricultural sector?
Yes, well, to give you an example, one of the things that happened over the past years is that there are various seed companies active in the Netherlands and who also operate internationally, and they really put their talents and force together to see whether they could join forces and see how they really could better perform in a country like Nigeria. So I know that in Kano they have started projects investing with the breeding of new seeds that are much more climate resilient than the ones they were using until that time. So there's an investment going on with a number of Dutch seed companies involved, where NABC, for instance, did a bit of coordination of getting all the actors at one table. So yes, I think that has been a successful activity.
Yeah, it does. Thanks again, Mr. Frank.
You're welcome.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question. Okay, my question is more on the risk aspects. I think it goes to Madam Gina about how the risk assessment for African-based investments, how does it truly reflect the realities of things, and how does it sit well with both the investor and the those that are to receive the investment, in terms of probably maybe the interest rate, in terms of the term sheet and all of that.
Thank you so much, Admin, for your question. So if I understood correctly, your question was how you can form your investment project, right? So that your project is attractive to foreign investors. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that's correct, for both investor and the recipients.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, like I think, when we look at the question, we first look at a well-designed business plan, right? So that you you formulate your business idea, and you also work on the projections and how will you achieve the goals that you are putting in place. And also, like, for example, if you try to attract the impact investors, for impact investors are also not only the financial data are important, right? Like your financial projections, but also how you are creating the local impact in terms of how your project would generate the jobs, how will it be environmentally, socially sound, and climate aspects. even if you are not there, even if you need additional financing to achieve these targets, but if you are able to formulate, kind of like a well-rounded business, so that gives you much more chance to attract the investors who also not only are there for profit, but also there for your country and for your communities. I hope that answered your question. If not, let me know. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, yeah, if you noticed, I later blocked my hand, and I'm coming from the public sector angle. So when Frank was talking about rural finance, financial inclusion, and all that, I wanted to ask the exact question that Celine just asked now, and how, because in all these kind of projects or funding, there are 3 areas we need to cover, which Gunnar just talked about too. You talk about the people, the planet in terms of sustainability, and then the profit also. So that was what I wanted to ask. How can it be structured? Because coming from the public sector, I have seen how we have worked with international organizations around what we call RUFI, that is rural finance in Nigeria, and also the microfinance, which later went into financial inclusion under the central bank. But I think Gunnar has addressed those basic things we need to look at before we progress. And so I think I'm satisfied with her answer. That's why I dropped my head.
Okay, thank you, moderator. Sorry, I dropped my question on the chat box. Maybe you missed it. So I was actually asking whether MIGA can finance the establishment of shared facilities for smallholder farmers, things like drying facilities for grains, warehouses, farm machinery for people who are not able to have like medium to large scale farm enterprises, maybe under a bigger investor who will serve as an anchor. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. So yeah, I wanted to, first thing is I wanted to clarify, because MIGA is not as an investor, right? So we do not provide financing to the projects, but we can provide support these type of projects if you have identified the investor, cross-border investor, who is interested to invest in your project, and they are willing to provide the and they are willing to work with MIGA so we can provide the guarantees to them. And I think I saw Frank's hand up. Maybe Frank wanted to
So during my time at Rabobank, we did quite a bit of business in both Kenya and in Tanzania about setting up warehouse receipts finance, especially for coffee growers, but you can also imagine other crops that can be stored into official facilities and then based on the produce being stored, loans can already be provided for because the collateral is in the warehouse. This is a system that went really well in Tanzania and Kenya. It didn't happen overnight. You need a good legal structure, so you need public involvement into making this work, but it can be done. And we also know that in other countries, they're looking at similar schemes. So this is a good method. And I think with a good cooperation between commercial banks that have an appetite for agriculture and with governments and development agencies, good results can be booked. If I look at Nigeria, we have also been in contact with, for instance, the Bank of Agriculture, where we did some assessments and tried to see whether we could do much more for smallholder farmers into also bringing finance. That really was pretty hard. What I'm a strong believer in is in the creation of digital platforms, and this happens to take place in Nigeria as well. Not that much success everywhere yet, but I think it will come up. If smallholder farmers who are not able to provide any collateral for any loans, but can show that they do regular transactions, they can make a regular income, they do a good business, they should be able to also obtain loans to professionalize their business and to grow their business, not based on factual collateral, but much more on the insights that they provide in a digital manner and that is being stored and managed on a digital platform. That I think really has quite a bit of potential in a country like Nigeria. I really look forward to the progress there. Another thing I want to mention that is really interesting in Nigeria is AFEX, the commodities market, digital commodities market. Also there you see that a lot more transparency is being created into the agri-value chains by making things digital. So you can actually make better prices as a farmer by bringing it to the by selling your stuff on AFEX then through a number of middlemen. So interesting progress being made in some markets. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Gunnar and Frank. Good information. My question is actually twofold. One for Gunnar and the other for Salim. So Gunnar, I assume the investor on any of the programs that you guarantee, the investor could be a Nigerian investor, a Nigerian institution, or must it be a European investor? And secondly, would you guarantee a raw commodity trade transaction, or must it be a value add transaction? And then the second question, which is for Salim, I was hoping to hear a little bit more about what to expect in Switzerland, sort of the flow of the events from day 1 to 3, a summary, just so we have a better understanding of what to expect and potentially be prepared to be effective. if we do show up in Switzerland? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dapwa. So I'm gonna start answering my portion of questions. So on the first question, whether or not we can ensure Nigerian investor, as we discussed, MIGA's mandate is to facilitate foreign direct investment. So it means that the investment needs to come cross-border, right? So it could be a European investor, or it could be just your neighboring country. Or if the Nigerian company has also, like, let's say, subsidiary outside Nigeria, or the parent company maybe is outside Nigeria. So as long as, the main criteria is that the investment flows cross-border, right? So it could be, so anything outside Nigeria coming in Nigeria, but it could be for Nigerian investors, it would mean that Nigerian investors investing in another country where you consider this kind of risk mitigation tool that MIGA offer is needed, right? But it would not work for like just local to local jurisdictions. So that is
even if the trade is international, even if the trade is cross-border.
Yes, exactly. For trade transactions, we have a product for trade finance, but that is in cases where there is a private sector trade with the public sector. So the public, what we would guarantee is the public sector financial obligations to foreign commercial banks, right? So that is, we cannot do like a private to private. I think that's something IFC may be able to do, but not MIGA.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gunnar, if I understand correctly, just what you said now. So if a foreign country but has that has a holding company in Nigeria but based for overseas, but does multicultural, so let's say we have an arm of trading in Malawi, for example, and Kenya, and then we have our source in Nigeria, but we are trading in the United Kingdom. Do you say because these are three arms of both privates, you guys doesn't have anything to do with it, or must we involve public funded entities for you to come in?
Well, we cannot do the trade for the public, for the private to private sector, right? Because we are investment guarantee agency, right? So what we can cover is the cross-border investment.
Okay.
And so there needs to be investment component, whether in terms of equity contribution or shareholder, non-shareholder loans, right? There needs to be investment going in, and for the trade, we only we can cover the trade transactions, but only if in Nigeria, if the borrower would be a public entity, right? Okay. So it has to be like a government procuring certain, let's say, agriculture imports or fertilizers, where the large commercial bank is giving the financing. So if that's something you're interested in, this kind of public type of trade finance transactions, I can send you more information on that. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, please do. Yes, I will appreciate the further information on that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you can send me your maybe contacts, maybe in a chat, your email address, or maybe through the organizers, I can get your information.
I'll do that straight away to Salim, and then he can send it to you across.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.